inaugural Youth Talks. So, what is Youth Talks? Many of you may be asking. Funny enough, myself and Darian would have talking about what we can do as a council to really get you to talk about some of the issues that face them and really get people buzzing, get all the university students together to bring perspectives so that we could all find solutions to some of the issues that we face. So, just excuse me. So what is Youth Talks? The youth population in Tobago represents a significant segment of our society with immense potential to drive positive change and contribute to the development of our islands. However, young people often face numerous challenges, including limited opportunities for meaningful dialogue, insufficient access to resources and support, and the lack of platforms to voice their concerns and aspirations. In response to these challenges, the Tobago Youth Council proposed and implemented a series of monthly youth talks. These talks will serve as a dynamic forum where young individuals like ourselves can come together, discuss pressing issues, share perspectives, and collaborate on finding solutions to critical challenges facing our community. By providing this type of platform and dialogue, we wish to collaborate and empower Tobago youths to the development of our island. Now, this initiative is done in collaboration with JCI Tobago, Youth Transcending Boundaries, the Roxborough Police Youth Club, the Phoenix Society, and Youths of Tobago. I hope I did not forget anyone. Did I say Rotaract Tobago? Yes, okay. So what are we going to discuss today? We are discussing understanding the difference between unemployment and underemployment, an issue that many of us can relate to. We have a dynamic team of panelists. We have the Faith B. Israel, the Deputy Chief Secretary and Secretary for Health, Wellness and Social Protection. Dr. Faith is a social scientist whose focus is health education, program development, and evaluative research. She's the chairperson of an NGO that provides health and wellness opportunities for special communities. She's also very active with various youth-focused organizations in her community. Dr. Faith delved into active politics in an effort to continue impacting the social needs of her community, and she's currently the area representative for Bell Garden, Glamorgan, and of course, as I said, she serves as the Deputy Chief Secretary and the Secretary for Health. Now, thank you, Dr. Faith, can you give her a round of applause? And she's always open to anything that the TYC has. Last year, we also had a conversation about mental health, and she was there discussing with the young people. So she's always just a phone call away when we need her. So thank you so much for being there all the time. And of course, we have Darian Mitchell, a distinguished professional in GIS and disaster management. And many of you probably are asking, what is GIS and disaster management? Big words, but of course you recognize him from being one of the youth that would have assisted so diligently in the oil spill cleanup. So give him a round of applause for that. So he has served both as our vice president and he's currently the president of the Tobago Youth Council. He holds a bachelor in geography and a master in science in biodiversity, conservation and sustainable development from the best university there is, the UWI St. Augustine campus. Darian is well equipped to address multifaceted challenges in his field, and his tenure at TEMA showcased his adeptness in GIS analysis and emergency response coordination. Alongside his professional endeavors, Darian's commitment to youth advocacy, and leadership positions him to be a valuable asset in driving positive change within his community and beyond. May I also mention that Darian is an avid footballer and not so good goalkeeper. So give Darian a round of applause. Last but definitely not least, my sister in service, Miss Vanessa Boyce. She holds an international master's in business administration, specializing in entrepreneurship and innovation from the Arthur Lockchak Global School of Business, as well as a BSc Management Studies and a diploma in public sector management from the University of the West Indies. She's the program officer 2 within the Tobago House of Assembly and a certified event coordinator executing corporate and social events. Now, I know most of the times when people read bios, it's just a lot of words, but Vanessa is one who walks the walks and talks the talks. You could see her in most of the carnival events. So salute and kudos to you, Vanessa, for putting your degrees, your diplomas, and your experience to work. Give her a round of applause. And of course, Vanessa has been involved in youth and community development for most of her life. She's the co-founder and president of the Pink Diamond Society for Ladies. She's the past president of the Rotary and Rotaract Tobago Club and the past district Rotaract representative for the Rotary District 7030. So give her a raving round of applause to all of our panelists this evening. So today, let's go further into our panel discussion. We would be, defining unemployment and underemployment, the causes and contributing factors, the impact on individuals and communities, and the policy implications and solutions. So before we dive into discussions, let me just give some house rules. So we will have the panel discussion first. Each member of the panel would have a chance to answer the question. Thereafter, the panel discussion is over, we will have a question and answer segment from the audience. And I urge the audience to jot down your questions so that when we start the Q&A, you would be ready and willing to ask the panelists your questions. So without further ado, let's jump right into it. So let's define unemployment and underemployment. So I would ask Darian, can you start us off? Explain what constitutes to unemployment and underemployment and make a distinction between the two concepts and their impact on individuals and the economy. I hope you can remember that question. I'm sorry.
I will try to. Thank you, Brittany. Good evening or good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone. Nice. So within my opinion, I believe that unemployment is when you do not have a job or a means of income. Underemployment, on the other hand, are where persons who have high-level qualifications or certain level of qualifications and they are not being paid for that. So the level of income is not equitable or equal to what you would have really studied or you all are putting out right now. So to me, I think the difference is primarily one would have a job and one is not being paid sufficiently for said job.
Thank you very much, Darian. I'll hand that over to Dr. Faith.
Certainly, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I would add an additional component, which includes how well you can afford the lifestyle that you want to have and how well you can afford the basic minimum that you need. So you may be employed, but because your salary is very low, probably because you are not being paid for the qualifications that you have, you are not being employed in the field that you are qualified, or because you simply are at a job where the salary is too low for you to meet your basic requirements, you now need to figure out how to get more money, how to work a second job, how to take up some shifts, how to do all of those things because your basic needs are not being met with the salary you are getting. That is where, that is in addition to what Darian said, is where the underemployment is, because you are employed, you have a job, you get up and you go to work every day, or whatever the schedule is, but it's not meeting your basic needs.
Some of the things that I've always seen when you look at people underemployed. Either you are skilled and qualified, but you are not using your skills in your job. So you may have a degree in biology, but you are a receptionist in a dentist's office. So you are underemployed because you're not using your skills. Or you have a job where you are employed for the qualifications you have, but you're being paid like an entry level, you're not getting paid the amount. So that's another side of it. Or you have a job where you are doing what you are qualified for and getting paid, but it's a part-time job, so you're not really using yourself, using everything either way. So it's either you have your skills, not getting paid, you're not using your skills, or it's probably a part-time job.
Thank you so much, Vanessa. I want to echo Dr. Faith's sentiments on salary being low. I think I speak for every public servant when I say we really want a raise. We really want a raise. Nobody else don't want a raise? Why are you so quiet? You all don't want a raise? Yeah, we speak. Thank you. And I really wanted to stay on Vanessa's point where she said, where she spoke about underemployment, and I would give you real life examples. I know a very brilliant chemist that has finished school for about 3 years now, and she's working as a receptionist at Courts currently. Very brilliant Tobagonian, wants to stay and give back, and she's at Courts. Not saying that Courts is not a good job. It's a means to an end, but she can use her expertise in so many different ways. And then when I see the statistics where they say we only have 3.8% people unemployed, I was like, is that maths really maths thing? Because where I work, I see coming in for a URP job, literally begging for jobs, and it's hundreds of people. So I really thank Vanessa for raising that statistical point. And I want to ask you, Vanessa, what do you think are some of the causes and contributing factors to under and unemployment?
Well, I think one of the main contributing factors to both unemployment and underemployment is the state of the economy. So if the economy is on a downturn, then you have a lot of people who may not be able to get jobs. But the thing is, when the economy is at a downturn, then you may have people who are qualified asked to do more than they are required to do. So you have people who, you may have a job where they downsized, but they downsize and continue to function because the same people are now doing two-persons job but getting the same amount. So that's one of the contributing factors, I believe, for both unemployment and underemployment. We also look at people, the kind of qualifications that people get, if it really aligns with what is demanded right now. And I think that's a problem that we have in Tobago, Trinidad and Tobago, and worldwide, where persons probably decide to do a degree because they think, well, yeah, this is what is available, or this is what I think I'm good at. But then when they come out, they cannot get a job in this particular field. Another factor is changes in technology. You know, you may have gone and done a particular study, but then as you come out, you realize a machine can do your job for you. So those are some of the causes, I think, of unemployment and underemployment.
Thank you so much, Vanessa. I would like to ask Dr. Faith to speak on some of the contributing factors and causes for persons specifically who are doing jobs that are not within their skilled field, who can do so much more.
Certainly. I would actually like to echo what Vanessa said and expand a little bit. The economic environment has a lot to do with how well we are employed or unemployed. What does that mean? And let me go from a Tobago House of Assembly perspective. Right now, the Tobago House of Assembly is the entity that employs the largest volume of people on the island. Now, that is happening because a lot of people see a THA job as a steady, secure means of income. And that comes with a rush, which is what you were talking about, you know, those who are showing up asking for these jobs. And now the other side of that is twofold. The other side of the economy, which is the private sector, has not been developed well enough to be able to pick up the slack, in essence. So there aren't as many jobs in the private sector for people who are qualified in social work, for people who are qualified in chemistry, for people who are qualified in biology. We do not have private sector entities that are available on the island, so that you may be very qualified in those areas, but the only job on the island are in the government sector. And then when you look at the government sector, we are regulated by these public service rules that speak to what the salaries could be, for example, and I'll give an example of something that happened in my division. I recently went out to, by I mean the division, of course, recently went out to hire two sets of professionals. One is a director of social protection, because we recognized that we needed a head of the social protection unit. And the other one were for senior program coordinators within social protection. When we started going through that process, we had to work with management services units. And those, because even though I am in the public sector, I have a kind of a worldview, a private sector view of things. The suggestions that we went in with salaries and so forth, as soon as we made those recommendations, we were told, you all can't offer these salaries. Because that will totally topple the entire salary structure for the government. So we had to figure out now how to, one, get somebody with the ridiculous number of years and degrees and experience and all kind of thing that we are asking for, but who would be willing to come for, in what is real terms, a little bit of money. And we have to figure out how to do that balancing. We are hoping that somebody who absolutely loves Tobago, who wants to stay here, who willing to eat breadfruit and mango and, you know, that kind of thing, with the master's degree and the doctoral degree will come. and take up the position and allow us to run an effective system. So it's a kind of catch-22. Even though we wanted to, we were advised that we couldn't do it because of how it will shift the entire system. The other thing I want to highlight as well is the fact that I think for many of us, we did not get sufficient guidance when we were younger as it relates to what fields to go into. So you went to school, you get your subjects, you go to college. There was a point where everybody was doing social work. And I actually had to tell someone who was thinking about going into social work, please, for the life of all of us, do not do that social work degree, because you will be one of 200 people coming out at the end of your period with the social work degree. And guess what? There will be 5 spaces. So having that kind of difficult conversation and really understanding what is really available, what the market really wants, what you need to go beyond, what is the easiest thing, would help us. And I think those are some of the contributing factors to why we have the unemployment, because in many instances, it is because somebody is trying to not be unemployed, why they take the job that now puts them in the category of being underemployed.
I would love to stick on you before I move on to Darian, because you mentioned 2 very important things. And I would like to ask you, as a THA member, of course, what is the THA doing to boost the private sector so that employees can go out there? And
Oh, that is a whole other workshop, my dear. That is a whole other workshop, because it means that what we really need to do is to boost confidence, to allow private sector I actually did a bachelor's of science in neuroscience. I wanted to become a neurosurgeon. When I finished the neuroscience degree, that was the point where I technically should have returned to Tobago. And I thought to myself, well, that ain't making no sense at all. Because why coming back to Bagel with a neuroscience degree? And then I realized that one, I did not really, really love medicine the way I thought I loved medicine. Again, going back to the guidance, again, and because I had the pleasure of being in a hospital setting, I was able to recognize for myself before going into med school, this medical doctor thing ain't really cutting it for you. And then I was able to do public health when I figured out what that was. But that actually took me having experiences in the medical system to realize that is not where I want to go. It also required me having experience in the public health system in the US to recognize that that is kind of what I want to do, and had me look around with the guidance of folks from Tobago and so forth to say, yeah, that is something that we would actually need you to study, and you can come back with that degree. So it goes back to the guidance again. It goes back to having the experiences that we need to have, and the honest experiences and the honest decisions that we needed to make before going into these things that would last a lifetime.
Understood.
Yeah.
Thank you. Darren, can I ask you to touch on also the contributing factors and jump right into our other question, which is, what are some of the impacts that and unemployment causes to individuals and communities?
Okay, so first of all, as it relates to unemployment, I know one of the issues that we usually face, a lot of persons don't accept the jobs that are being made available. So nobody wants to go and work KFC, nobody wants to work Subway, they feel it'll be better than that. Now, at the end of the day, it's an honest living, and it does contribute to the GDP of the island as well as helps you to make ends meet. So some persons rather stay unemployed than go and work in these areas. In addition to those who are underemployed, I know that some persons are not reaching that quota in terms of what their needs are. However, they won't seek alternative measures or multiple streams of income. So starting your own small business and other stuff like that, these are other ways to beat the underemployment until something comes up. Now, persons who are underemployed as well, one of the things that you could also do is, even if you're working another job or something on the side, it adds to your resume and it shows balance and a varying skill set. Because as the lovely ladies to my right just said, a lot of persons go into social work. But when everybody comes up with that same degree, everybody has a first class, what separates you from somebody else who has that degree is the additional skill sets that you have to develop on your own accord. So these employers are looking forward to these things. Now, as it relates to the second question, the impacts on individuals and communities, it encourages crime. A lot of persons now have to resort to robbing or scamming and these other things in order to make ends meet. In addition to that, there's the mental aspect where persons are frustrated, they're getting fed up, they're tired, they're annoyed, suicidal thoughts because you're not able to provide for your family or provide for the persons that are depending on you. So it has a lot of mental impacts as well. And then persons may start to isolate themselves. So we now have social exclusion where persons no longer want to go out and stuff like that. So there are varying levels of it. It all depends on how you look at it. But I won't take up all the time, so I'll just pass the mic over.
Can I ask you to pass the mic over to Vanessa? And
No
Vanessa,
problem.
on that same question, can I ask you to explore how underemployment affects an individual's career growth?
Well, one of the ways, just as Darren said, that mental health part of it, because if you're in a job where you do not feel like your skills are being utilized, you start to question, what did I go to school for? What did I spend all those years studying for? And it starts to earn money, and that starts to play on you mentally. So it leads to persons either feeling not fulfilled, not feeling motivated to go to work. So all of that ties in and it affects them mentally when it comes to underemployment. And the thing is with underemployment as well, one of the other ways that could lead to underemployment is when people are overeducated. So yes, where you decide, as I said, you go and you keep studying, but there is no avenue for you to work in that particular area. So then you feel frustrated in what you're doing, you feel frustrated. And another area, even when it comes to unemployment, and one of the contributing factors of it, and I'm sure Dr. Faith could talk about that as well, when we see a rise in even domestic violence cases, because you have a situation in families where if one person was employed and lost their job or is unemployed, then one other person is probably the breadwinner. And then that person now could use specific tactics against that person. You know, they start to talk down on them, or now the person who's in the position of not being employed, they feel they are now dependent on that other person, and it leads to so many different things in a family. So those are some of the impacts when you look at that. And even another, I know I'm jumping from unemployment to underemployment. They're two different things, but there's so many different examples that I can give on how people are affected, or even how people get to that point. And even in preparing for this, I remembered about 8 years ago, there was an employee, well, there is an employee, person still works where I work at education. And there was a vacancy that came up that person was qualified for. And I remember telling them, why don't you apply for this job? And they said, no, I don't want to go through all of that. That's too much stress. I don't want to worry about that. I said, you sure? Because the job is paying, I think it was about close to $2,000 more than how much they were making at the time. And as I said, you're qualified for the position. And they said, no, they don't want to do that. That's too much work. I'm happy where I am and everything. So they didn't apply. Somebody else got it. And a few years later, there was a rationalization of the position because it was an administrative position. And sometimes in the THA and in central government as a whole, they would take certain positions and sort of benchmark them to sort of make, so for example, if there's one position in one division is the same salary as another, same salary as central government and so on. So that exercise was done. So the particular position that the person could have gotten, salary went up again. And now that I'm looking at them, they're still in the same position. Mm-hmm. They seem like they have not grown at all. Their child is now pushing to university level, and sometimes I wonder, if they had taken up that opportunity, they would have been in a better financial position. So there are people who choose to be underemployed, I should say, because they probably don't want to work as hard, and then later on they have issues may arise, but at the time they probably feel that they are not, I don't know if you feel they're not good enough for the job, or you don't want the extra work, or you don't want the extra stress. But then as young people especially, we have to take that leap at times, because you went and studied, you went and you did this, you went and did that, you don't know when the opportunity is going to come again. And sometimes I look at the employee and sometimes I wonder if they're still happy, but as I said, that person chose to not upgrade themselves, and now they are, I guess, reaping the consequences of that.
Yeah. I like that you touched on that example, because so many of our public servants seem so depleted mentally. Sorry to say, but some of them are like robots and they want to stay where they are. So, Dr. Faith, we have touched on mental health, and mental health is a very big part of underemployment and unemployment. Can you speak to us on that, please?
Sure. So before I speak about mental health specifically, I would like us to kind of rethink what we're talking about as well. I think, for instance, is going back to the causes and contributing factors, and it goes back to the guidance as well. Too many of us were told at the beginning of our educational period that the academic world is the only direction to go. Now, granted, you need to be able to read, you need to be able to count, you need to be able to reason, you need to be able to have logic, you need to be able to do these things so that you learn when you are learning. But the fact is that a lot of the higher paying jobs in Tobago right now are those jobs that you do with your hand. The technical vocational skills, And many of us, our parents, our grandparents, at fault because, before the farm was for when you're not bright, so they send you, or you're doing woodwork and you're not sending you to go and do that. When in fact, it is really those people. You ever call an electrician? And when the man tell you to put up that one light and that one thing is how much money?
Yeah.
Let us think about it. And imagine if that person had just not done electrical and then tried to do the academic quote unquote work and end up at a desk job where they don't, they're not making any money, they're not enjoying it, but simply because they ventured into using their hands and they ventured into those other fields, they are now making way more money. Let me tell you something. You need to listen to certain categories of people talk about what they do when things go bad. I have heard fishermen, the rara, cusbud them down by the bay, talk about how they were able to buy the $60,000 part. And I am there thinking, you were able to buy the $60,000 part? Just so? And it's because they had the money and they're griping here, but they actually had the money to buy the $60,000 part. Think about that. I have heard it way too many times. Now going back to the mental health. And I'm sure you're now wondering what have you gotten yourself into, having listened to this. We have a challenge generally where people are not fulfilled. Mm-hmm. And if you are not fulfilled in other parts of your life, you then add not have enough money to eat and take care of your children and everything else, it adds on and it piles on. And we are seeing quite a number of people who are really, really challenged. Now, the good thing is that my therapeutic counselors and so forth at the division are actually saying people are really coming to them now to get the counseling, to get the guidance, to get the kind of support that is provided at the division, which is good. But they then quickly say, but I have 20 clients lined up, waiting to be scheduled, which tells you the number of people who really are not well, who need the kind of support that they are providing. And a big chunk of it is not being financially stable and then having to deal with the mental health issues associated with that.
Thank you very much. Now I want to go back to Darian. Darian, what do you think are some of the policy what are some of the solutions to underemployment and unemployment?
So as it relates to under and unemployment, let's go back to when we started to select subjects in school. Mm-hmm. I believe that there should be an inclusion in terms of having some practical or technical vocational skills within those things, because like rightfully said, not everyone has the ability or the academic incline. However, there are persons who are greater with their hands, and those persons are now seen as lesser than those who have the academic capabilities. So I think the inclusion of that as well within high schools coming up would also be very great. If we look at agriculture now, agriculture was something we used to laugh at back then, but now when food scarcity is a big thing and you want your crops local, and you start looking at the prices of some of these produce, you want to go home and say, right, let me start to dig this plot, and I go in and plant my own thing. Dragon fruit is like $70 a pound. Yeah. Imagine if you are a dragon fruit farmer. These are all the things that we need to take into consideration. Now, as it relates to the guidance, a lot of persons also don't do much research before they go out into the field and study. Some persons say, I have a kind heart, I'm a nice person, so I want to do social work and help persons. Now, they didn't look into the fact that the job field is saturated. Some persons now also take a leap of faith like me. I took a big risk because I wanted to pursue GIS and geography. Now, this was not a big field back then, but due to the pandemic, GIS now became an integral part of almost any organization, and almost everyone is looking for someone to do maps or do that geospatial analysis. And then going forward as well, climate change. We are living in small island, developing states. Climate change is a big factor, and these are things that persons need to start looking into, because you have to get the knowledge before in order to be employable for these positions or these skill sets, because these are the jobs that will be opening up very shortly. Now, as it relates to the policies, I'm not sure how much the government would be able to assist, but I think what they should also do is do more research in terms of the gap analysis, in terms of the jobs that are available, what is scarce and what is saturated, and then start guiding persons and diverting them to alternatives, not deterring them from what they want to do, but showing them the harsh reality of the fact that you are willing to do this means that you may not receive a job within this field for the next 5 to 10 years. So that's the harsh truth that we have to start telling persons, because if we don't do it from then and there, 3 to 4 years now, you're stuck in a job, you're underemployed, you're upset, you're angry, and you start getting frustrated. And then now you just become a part of the quote-unquote system where you come into work after 9, you eat breakfast till 10, 3:30, I still in work, boy. I busting out. Friday, you finish by 2 o'clock, and don't even talk about if a holiday is tomorrow. Well, no selfie and going work. So all of these things are contributing factors, but these are what the persons who are seeking employment and unemployment need to seek as well. And lastly, simple as cover letters, resumes, these things. A lot of persons don't have other persons reviewing it for them, or peer reviewing your resume, or seeking professional assistance. As well as when a vacancy is out, if there are 100 persons applying for the job and they tell you, head the envelope, put it in a brown envelope and put manager to be House of Assembly, you decide, you pin it in a white envelope, that doesn't get tossed to the side. So they are looking for processes or ways to make it easier for themselves to narrow down the selection process, because what they see is that, okay, this person clearly cannot read, or they're not following instructions. So this automatically excludes you from the hiring process. So simple things like that, paying attention to detail, also contributes to you being able to actually achieve a job.
Before you hand over the mic, Darian, I want to ask, because we rely on the government so much, and you mentioned some of the solutions is to advocate for persons doing their research and things like that. As a GIS professional, a lot of young people don't know about that. A lot of people may want to go into that field. What are you doing in your capacity to assist other young persons to get into that field, to do more research? And what are you also doing in your capacity to teach younger persons about writing cover letters and etc.?
Okay, so as it relates to the GIS aspect, even just up to this week, someone would have reached out to me asking for guidance in terms of how to get into the field of GIS. So I usually have slides prepared to give them just to give them a guideline so they could see what it's about, and then I would share this information with them and then have them answer questions. If I see courses coming up with UE, like the short courses, I would show them that as well and give them that option to go into. I also would do volunteer service, whereby I would have trained a cohort from CERT 1000 in GIS as well. So I would not withhold the knowledge that I have in terms of GIS. I used to teach as well and tutor, and I try to show them what the GIS is about and show them real life how it works as well. And 1 and 2 persons said they're actually interested in going forward and pursuing a career in geography. And then you would guide them and tell them, okay, well, St. Augustine has the better program for geography because they offer remote sensing, opposed to Mona, which just offers GIS as well. So all of these things I would have shared them, I would have told them what my experiences was like and stuff like that. Now, my experience may not be their experience as well. And what was the second part of the question?
What are you doing within your capacity as the Tobago Youth Council's president to teach younger persons how to write cover letters and how to differentiate their applications?
Okay, so in 2023, which was last year, we started a developmental program through the summer period, Java, entitled title Career Catalyst. So what it actually does is show persons how to write cover letters, ensure your resume is up to par. We do interview skills as well as public speaking. And last year we went as far as to showing persons how to start a business and how to maintain a business. These programs were well reciprocated, and it's something we would aim to be doing annually, because a couple persons reach out after and they would have indicated, well, all the time I was submitting a resume and nobody was calling me. And then after the program, we helped them with their resumes, and then they submitted and they were actually successful in attaining a job. Two of those persons actually wanted to come today, but they couldn't because they had to work. So I had to understand.
Thank you very much for your service, and I would ask that Vanessa take the mic, because I find these questions to be a little bit broad, so I'm going personal.
Okay.
So Vanessa, you just gave an example of the employee that didn't want to apply for the job because she thought that it was too much work, basically. So as an employee within your division, what is the division doing, or what are you doing to help other public servants to really get out of their shell, to get out of that mundane lifestyle, to see different perspectives? What are you doing within your capacity? And have you ever, sorry, too personal, have you submitted anything based on your observation of persons within your division? You would have seen a lot of people who could advance. Did you propose any career guidance within the division to do as an employee?
So yes, I usually try to encourage employees to seek higher positions or to better themselves. And I do that because even though I am not a supervisor or manager per se, because of how my position is, however, because of my background and experience working in the division for about 16 years, I'm usually part of like interview panels to recruit persons for different positions. So when you see, and I'm also, as I said, even though I don't work in HR, I work in the administrator's office, but because of the knowledge that I have, I'm usually do provide assistance to HR when it comes to getting information on job descriptions and so on, and the org chart, and seeing which employee fits where and all of that. So I usually have a good pulse of who is employed where, at least on the contract side, because the public service is a whole different ball game. So at least on the contract side, because I've seen almost everybody there come in, I've seen almost everybody's resume, and people, in talking to people, you know who's progressing and so on. So usually what I would do when we have any ads go out, some will go internal, some will go external, you encourage people to apply for certain positions. There are people who would come to me to review their resumes, see where they could improve, see what probably they should add. I think a lot of people, when they're doing their resume, they neglect their youth work. Even when I sit on interview panels, sometimes, especially for entry-level positions, you would hear somebody talk and ask them what experience they have, and they would say they have no experience. And I would ask them, are you involved in church? Were you involved in school? Well, yes, I was in a club in school. I said, well, that is experience. What kind of, especially when you ask them about leadership. I've never had any leadership experience. Were you in a school? Were you in a group? Yes. What position you held? Well, I was the secretary of a group, right? And how did that work, you know? So that's why I always encourage people to get involved in groups like the Tobago Youth Council, which of course is a part of which all the other groups are part of, Rotaract and all the other groups, to get involved in these things, because it prepares you for the workplace. It prepares you because you have to work with people. You have to work in groups. You are forced to do that with limited resources, which is a huge plus when it comes to entering an organization, because you have an experience of working with limited resources to get things done. So those are the kind of things I use and I try to encourage. Especially young persons who come in, I try to encourage them to get involved in youth work as well. Those who might just be on that pathway of work home, to get involved in other things, because just the work-home dynamic is not enough to really build you. You need to go out there and meet people of different mindsets, people of different thinkings, people who do different things, and that's how you learn. So I always try to encourage people to do that. I also want to put a plug there, as we spoke about data, the Department of Advanced Training and Advisory Services, which is under the Division of Education. I know right now, the department is trying to get information from the different divisions and subsequently private sector to find out what is the demand and what are the jobs that are missing. My only challenge is sometimes I feel like even within an organization, you might not know what is missing. So I feel like it's an exercise. So now I'm putting this on the policy side. This is an exercise I think that the Tobago House of Assembly has to look at on a broader scale, because any administrator could say, well, I think we need this position, I think we need that position, but it should now tie into what is the overall policy of the Assembly and where we see Tobago going. And I think that is the main thing, because I remember with this library here, there were scholarships offered for persons in library sciences about 10 years before the library even finished. So there were people in Tobago who were qualified to work in the library, and the library wasn't even finished. So that's why when this library was commissioned, we were able to staff the library, all the librarians, because they were trained before. Sadly, they had to wait 10 years. They had to wait a few years. But eventually, those persons, all the persons with library science degrees in Tobago, were given a job. To the point where now, as the library seeks to advance, with technology and so on, they actually do have vacancies for people in library science careers. For some reason, it's an area nobody wants to study. I guess because not everybody likes to think, they always see it as just reading books. But there's so much more to library science. And as you come in the library, I would encourage you to probably speak to the librarians to find out exactly what is required, because I know that is one area for sure that they're always complaining they're not getting people in Tobago to study library science.
Let me just say, I used to work at the library, and I know exactly why people don't want to study library science. So we will close off with Dr. Faith. Can I ask you to give us some policy implications and solutions with a consideration of education and training initiatives? Thank you.
Certainly. So I think I would go even wider or broader than that. The Tobago House of Assembly is tasked with the mandate of creating this greatest little island on the planet. And you have to ask yourself, what will it take for this island that at this point we're still using cash, the island that at this point we still have to sign up a form and bring it in, the island at this point that is, all of these things. Not even just the island. I just came back from, I went to Jamaica and I had to go through Barbados. And I was so eternally embarrassed coming back to Trinidad and Tobago, where I had to fill out the immigration form. And I am thinking, oh, you really let Jamaica, boy? Serious, boy? What do we need to do to get to this being the greatest little island on the planet? And that means really making some very, very hard decisions. So, guidance, going back to DATAS, and you really, really, really want to do whatever degree you want to do, but data says, hard luck. We're not giving you money for that, because that is not what we envision. That is not what the data tells us we need in the 5 years that you are going to be done with this degree. Understanding that there is a whole big world outside of Tobago, and somehow being able to experience the world outside of Tobago. Now, we have the benefit of social media, we have the benefit of TikTok, we have the benefit of YouTube, we have the benefit of all of these things that allows us to see things that we would have never been able to see before. So us actually looking at those things, I know that we frequently get kind of upset when people come back and say, well, in America, that doesn't do it so. But in some instances, we really do need to listen to in America, we doesn't do it so. Because this is a method that was shifted 10 years ago. And let me give you an example that I gave someone today. And it goes back to this, this cash versus cashless system that is kind of annoying me. When I came back to Tobago in 2007, I was actually cashless in 2007 when I came back to Tobago. I could not remember the last day I actually picked up a dollar or cents because there was no reason to do it in the US in 2007. I went to Tanzania and you were meeting Maasai men, tribal men, with the Maasai garb living in wherever they're living and transferring money on their phones. This was before 2007. This was like maybe 2024 or so when I went to Tanzania. And we are now in 2004. No, not even 2023. I'm talking about 2004 is what I'm talking about, 20 years ago. When we went to Tanzania and these Maasai men were transferring monies on their phone and that kind of thing, paying bills on their phone and that kind of thing. And we in 2024 now having this brand new conversation about being cashless. We are going to have to make some really difficult policy shifts. And to be honest, I'm telling you all now because it's probably going to anger some of you. But the aim really is to get to the greatest little island on the planet. And the fact is we are at this point 20, 30 years behind. Way behind. So we need you all to think about what is going to be needed down the road. How many of you are studying AI? Put up your hand. No, okay. So let me ask, how many of you know about AI? How many of you have heard the term AI? Okay, good. How many of you have actually used one of those AI things where you put yourself in a nice picture and you have yourself, your face on Facebook, and you are planted somewhere else because you used one of those apps to do it? No, I've done it. I was on a Harley and all kind of story. I've done it. So what do you know about AI at this point? It is doing what?
Taking jobs.
Say it again.
Taking jobs.
Taking jobs.
Because it is a system that is allowing you to input data. It is allowing you to generate things quickly. It is allowing you to do mundane things quickly, things that human beings would make mistakes with because it's so simple, it's so mundane. And that means that unless you learn about AI and how AI functions and how AI works, in a couple of years, we would be the ones telling you, well, you know, we used to hire 30 people to do that. Now, we literally only need one person to make sure that the machine on. And that is just the reality of where the world is going. What does that mean for you now, though? When you are about to pick your subjects, and when you're about to pick where you are going to study and what you are going to study, what is it going to be? You have to think now. The computer that running the AI needs to be fixed. It will break down at some point. Somebody need to oil it and whatever. I don't know what else to do with computers. But you know what I mean? Somebody needs to do that. How many of us could go to school to do that part of it, so that even if the AI is doing what AI does, you still have an opportunity. That's the kind of thinking. And those of us in the THA have to figure out how to do this balance. Because we can't have a situation where we literally just send home 29 people. Because that creates a whole other set of problems. But it is having these conversations at this point with you so that you recognize that is the direction that we are going, and those are the decisions that we'll have to make soon. That are some of the areas, some of the solutions that we are hoping to do.
Thank you so much for that. Thank you very much. Right now, we want to open the floor for questions. So I know people are buzzing with questions. And if you aren't, I would just give you the mic, because that's who I am. So I would take the mic, and you can simply put up your hands. And come to the middle and ask your question.
Yeah, good afternoon. Breaker Benjamin on behalf of Youths of Tobago, YOT. And my question, simple question, but might come across as a controversial one, addressing the one of underemployment. How serious the policymakers taking in terms of a step to stamp out nepotism? Because that, to me, is one of the greatest detractors and one of the greatest factors that affecting the employment. Matter of fact, affecting both areas. So my question is it something that policymakers should look at on a serious level in terms of addressing that problem of employment and underemployment, nepotism? Right? That's my question. Thanks.
I will answer it, and he is correct. There's a full cultural shift that actually needs to happen. And let me explain what I mean. People that seem to actually vex with you when you don't give them the additional plug or give them the blight. And I was genuinely amazed at how many people come to you expecting you to do it. And not just with employment. Let me give you an example of something else that happened with procurement and so on now. Somebody actually called me within the last 2 weeks and said they wanted to talk to me. I said, what do you want to talk about? They wanted to offer a particular kind of service. I said, but okay, just now, you saw the notice, the request for proposals that came out with that same thing. Yes, we saw it. We sent it in, but that is why we want to talk to you. I said, sir, no. The fact that you saw it, the fact that you submitted, means that I cannot have any conversation with you about that now or any other time. As a matter of fact, until we've gotten to the end of the procurement phase where whoever won and got the bid and that kind of thing. But it was amazing to me how embedded it is, and as much as people say they don't like it for other people, but they want it for themselves. And that is a tough place to be, and it takes quite a bit of saying no and making enemies, unfortunately, to treat with the issue that Breaker Benjamin spoke about.
I really want to say better you than I, because that's one of the reasons I don't want to get into politics, because in Tobago terms, I enable people come and ask me for work. I enable, and it's the entitlement for me. It's the entitlement. We give out hampers usually, and there are people who don't need hampers. They don't need it. And they would come into the office and they would be like, I voted for you. What do you mean you can't give me a hamper? And I'm like, but you don't need the hamper. There are other people who need it. And it's widespread and it's hard to deal with. So I would say again, better you than I. So we have another question.
Good afternoon, everybody. Darian Phillips, representing JCI Tobago. I have 3 points to touch on. So, Darian, you mentioned having multiple skill sets and that kind of thing to put on your resume. What about the places that tell you you do too much? Because I've had several. I am a workaholic. I doing way too much. And I really need to dial back, right? And some of the things that I think are important for my resume, I would put there. I would not put all of my academic accolades on my resume when I'm going for something specific. However, the little other stuff would be there. TTSA, all of these things that I did in university, all of the things that I'm doing now. And I would have had persons tell me, you're doing too much. I mean, not in those exact words, but you're doing too much. So are you going to have time to do things for us? You know? And because then organizations come to a point where they kind of want you to do more than you are paid to do. And I'm living that right now. It does get a fight, right? So then what do we do now? Or then? That's one. Two, you also spoke about, I'm not sure who was it, but someone spoke about having a list of, I think it was you, Darian, the areas that people need to do, well, they have jobs, they have vacancies. There is actually a human resource needs list for Trinidad and Tobago on the scholarships website. And they have been updating it. I have been checking. They have been updating it, so I think that is something that you could try to put out there. I try to put it out as much as possible, but yeah, I could only do so much. And then the next point is bouncing off of the guy somewhere. I can't remember his name. Nepotism. What about those individuals who are qualified for the job but still don't get the job because of the fear of nepotism? So for example, I might know Faith. I might be very much qualified for a job, and Faith cannot give me the job because everybody knows me and Faith good. So what about us? Again, something that I'm living, right? Because where I'm working, the HR has the same last name as me. And everybody thinks that that's my aunt. So everybody's thinking, no, she's not. She really isn't. She really isn't, you know? And I am very much qualified for my job. So, but every day I have to live a little fight.
All right, so those are, yeah, boy. Thank you very much, Darian. So as it relates to the scholarship listing, I'll ask if you could share that information with us. So that is one of the reasons why we actually wanted to have these talks, because persons may have a wealth of knowledge that other persons within the audience may not have. And just by you simply sharing that, now we can broadcast this information for persons who are out there, and you'll have something that can assist someone who is deeply in need. And this might be someone's success story that they were scrolling through Facebook one day, they saw this listing, and then that changed their entire life. So thank you very much for that. Now, as it relates to the too much skills on your resume, I have had that issue as well in terms of applying for jobs. You could also consult with HR professionals before you apply for certain jobs, and they would guide you accordingly. Because if it's an entry-level position and you come in bachelor's, master's, they will believe that at some point you are going to supersede also, or go past the persons that are there, and you are going to start requesting more money. Because you have that capability and you have the right to ask for more money. And that is a tactic that they do. So sometimes when they say entry level and you come with a BSc and a MSc, they aren't going to hire you, not because you're not qualified, but because you have the ability or the capability to request more, and they realize you have that knowledge to fight against the policies that sometimes may not make sense that they have put in place. If you look at some of these stores or some of the places, they usually hire young persons between, let's say, the ages of 18 to 24, right? These are persons who are new to the job field. I know persons that were working for years and the employers never once told them about NIS. So these are the things that employers are doing. So they will try to hire persons who don't have that wealth of knowledge, and then they also prey on persons who are in need of a job. So you have a job now, you need the money, and they have you in a position whereby it's either you comply or we fire you. And what are you going to do when you need to make ends meet to provide for your family? So I would always say, don't allow persons who don't see your skill set as an asset to hire you, because it's the same as if you go into a store. If you can't afford something, then that's not really the store for you. So don't have those persons making you feel like less than you are. You need to be able to say, okay, this is my qualifications. Yes, I would settle for something at the point in time, but I will continue building myself, because there's no such thing as too much skills. You are a very diverse person, and you can now also use those skills, because I know you do, in order to pull in multiple streams of income as well. So if you're accustomed being good on social media, you're always on your phone, start doing content creation. That's a skill set. Darian, you could sew. We know you. I don't know how you just balance it, but I know you're always getting orders. But simple stuff like that, even teaching persons to sew as well, that could also be a means of income, and also giving back to the community as well. So you know, helping someone who now does not have the academic skill set, but the hands-on experience to now start making a level or making a means of income for themselves as well.
And it's the way he handed the mic to me for the last question. I feel full set up with that one. That is the reality of Tobago. The fact is, you know, everywhere else you talk about 6 degrees of separation. In Tobago is about 3. Everybody is your cousin, everybody is your nenen, everybody is some kind of, if you ask, everybody is. So that is something that we have to treat with all the time. I've recognized, though, that if you have very clear policies and procedures within the organization, where you do have your recruitment mechanisms, you have your job specs or your job descriptions well done. You have your shortlisting mechanism well done. You have your interview processes well done. By the way, I've recognized that on many of our interview panels, we do not have people who are competent in the areas that need to be on the interview panel. So you end up with people who really not supposed to. How are you interviewing me about a thing if you don't know the thing? And that is something that we have to be very, very careful of. But if those mechanisms are set up well, we don't have anything to fear, and hopefully wherever your aunt who is not your aunt is would be able to actually put those things in place. And if you come out on top of the process, you come out on top. To hell with what anybody else say, because you have a proof that the process that was set out is the process that was used, and this is the best candidate, full stop. And sometimes you have to be very willing to really don't care. I'm sorry, I've actually been told very frequently that I am actually a decent representative, but I'm not a good politician. Because this is how I speak my mind. I say what I think is right, and most of the times it offends, and so be it. But I think if you do the right thing and you follow the correct procedures and so forth, you really don't have much to worry about. And que sera, sera. What will be, will be.
Thank you very much. We have another question.
Good evening, everybody. I am Kaylee Lewis, representing the Rotaract Club of Tobago. So we spoke a lot about guidance this evening, and sometimes you have a passion, but your passion isn't really needed in the job market. So there are jobs that are available, fields that are available, and it's more feasible for you to do something in that field. Okay, so let's say someone, they're very bright, they have a passion they can't do it because they can't get a job. So they take up something else. They are able to pass all the courses, they get their degree. They are good at what they do, but they don't love it. So they can still end up coming to work late, eating breakfast till 10:30. You have to deal with people. And not because you're good at what you do means that you love it really. So how do we treat with a situation like that? Darren spoke about content creation. Gen Z jobs are very taboo. How do we treat with those situations with parents nowadays? Parents, if a child tells a parent they want to do content creation, that's the job they want to do. They want to become a YouTuber. That's not cutting it in most Caribbean homes, especially. It's not cutting it in most Caribbean homes. They're going to tell you that you have to do sort of side job or something like that. So how do we deal with those kinds of situations? You have your passion, you can't do it, you do something else. You're able to do it, but you don't love it. And then, that whole mental health aspect kicks in as well because you feel like you're not fulfilling your purpose, you're not doing what you love.
Thank you for the question, Kaylee. Now, when we say that people shouldn't do something because there isn't a demand for it, I don't think we're saying that don't pursue your passion, because a lot of times people take the easy way out, as in, I'm just going to do what is available. But as with the social work, because, so for example, if somebody likes helping somebody, social work might not be the only field that they should get in. There might be some other ways that they might want to do to help persons. Might not have to be social work, might not require you to get a degree in social work, but you may get a degree in business, and then you go ahead and create some huge NGO that gets funding from the United Nations, and now you are able to help people without having to depend on having that degree in social work. Now you hire people who have that social work because you did the degree in business and in whatever area that was needed based on what the United Nations had as their requirements. So that's what I'm saying. Instead of saying that because this is my passion, I think this is the only thing I can do. You might have a passion for something, but realize that it might make sense for you to do some other kind of study that will help you use your passion. So it's really about, and as a thing, when you are in Form 1 to Form 5, a lot of people don't really think, some people do think about what they want to do after. Most people don't. And when you reach Form 5 now, you're almost at a point where it's like, okay, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? Everybody going off to university, or everybody going to Form 6. Oh gosh, all right, my friend's going Form 6, I will go. And then you're almost pushed into it because you don't have that kind of guidance. And you end up doing something that you just went along with the flow or whatever. But the thing is, the way how life is, you might have done a degree in something, you don't like it, but that's not the end of it. No, I'm not telling you to go and do 3 years and waste on something that you don't want to do. But what I'm trying to say is, if you got to that point where you realize you did this degree and you really don't need it anymore, it's not the end of the world. There are a lot of people still doing degrees when they are later on in life. A lot of the billionaires, when you hear their story, they really started late because after you did this and did that and you realize what was really needed. Not all the time it will be when you're young, you're going to decide to do this and it's going to happen. Yes, that happens to some people, but not to everyone. Yes, sometimes it will take a while of really looking at the environment. And then another thing, as we've been talking about technology and things always changing, you might have decided to do this now and then later on in life it's no longer relevant, but you now realize that you can do something else. So you have to think of it as, it's not just not doing your passion, but really looking at what your passion is and what is the career path you can get, the several different career paths, which one probably makes sense here. And probably it might be a case where it might make sense what you really want to do is not in Tobago, might not be in Trinidad and Tobago, or might be something where you could offer your services online. You might be able to work remotely. You could be on a beach in Barbados, a beach anywhere else in the world, and you're working because you're able to look at the different opportunities, and it's not just in Tobago, but it's elsewhere. So you shouldn't really limit and, think that because your passion, you don't see a value for it right now, so you're going to do something else. Just look at all the different branches that you can go off on and find that place that's best suited for you.
Just to add, I know you spoke about the content creation and the Gen Z and the parents. Now, I think what most parents would like is for their children to have a stable job, right? Because some persons may, yes, you may be receiving more money on a 3-year contract, but when you look at a permanent job that probably pays $2,000 less, the stability is much more beneficial, because if you calculate how much you're making in the 3 years in comparison to a permanent job, you usually make more. So we see a lot of persons end up going into the force. Now, as it relates to the content creation, I think the best alternative or the best method would be to pursue it on the side while having something stable until the content creation becomes so much you are comfortable enough to leave the job that you have. So you make that paradigm, you make that shift, right? You transition from being a accountant to a receptionist, and then pursue that content creation full time because it's now fully sustainable. As it relates to persons who have their passion and they are in a job that they're good at but they're really not passionate about, I would say to develop your passion until you are called to serve. So don't have the degree there, you did the degree, and you're not working on anything to build that capacity in the degree. You just have the degree there, you put it down for 3 years, it does stay, it old and musty. And when there's a job opportunity coming up and you go to the interview panel and they ask you a basic question that you're supposed to understand because you did degree, you sit down and say, wait boy, I really and truly figured out how to answer this. So that is why I would always say, just develop your passion until you are called to serve. And sometimes you will just know when that call is for you.
And I would probably just wrap up by indicating that, at least in the Tobago House of Assembly, we know, let me speak for my division, we actually just created a position called content creator. So you could tell your mommy or daddy is a government work to be a content creator, because again, we recognize that it takes and it takes a different kind of thinking. It takes a different kind of thinking about what media is right now. Nobody cares about, I understand, because I've been told that it's only old people have Facebook. Listen, and if you have Facebook, maybe you're like me and not realizing you're old. It is what it is. So it is learning those things, coming to those realizations, accepting the harsh realities of, yes, I am old, so now I'm hotting up my head with TikTok and Instagram. Dr. Faith Official.